Hey there, everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to another awesome episode of On the Throttle with Jacqui Van Ham and my buddy Josh out here bringing you all of the breaking news in motorcycles and power sports. This is your road trip edition because I am indeed, like Willie Nelson, on the road again. I'm getting ready to shoot an awesome adventure in partnership with the folks at AIM Expo and us here at Motorcycle and Power Sports News. And we're doing a really great road trip show that's going to be a web series coming to you very soon. So make sure you go ahead and hit like, subscribe, all the buttons, all the things, all the stuff. You're not going to want to miss out on that series. Now, let's go ahead and jump into today's show, however, because we've got some great news coming your way. If you have been living under a rock, you might not be aware that the world's largest motorcycle trade show is just kicking off out in Milan, Italy. We will have highlights from this incredible show for you. I think next week, Josh and I decided we're going to take a little bit of time, dig through all of these new bikes, all these new releases, and bring you all of the best stuff on next week's program. But for this week, have no fear because we still have plenty of great news coming your way. In my neck of the woods, I'm going to be talking about a much anticipated motorcycle, and that is the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. And I'm also going to be discussing a motorcycle that's in a little bit of hot water out here. The sun is not shining at Sondors any longer. Josh, what you got going on in your neck of the woods?
I'm just going to start mine out with a joke. So, what happens when an Italian duck and an English tiger and a priest walk into a bar? I'm just going to leave it at that, and those are going to be my stories.
Well, I mean, you always keep me guessing out here, Josh, but we're
I
all
do.
going to have to wait for that story and all of today's awesome stories after this word from our sponsor. Well, welcome back, everybody. Well, I do not know about you, Josh, but I have been following with much anticipation the story of the Royal Enfield Himalayan. Since this motorcycle launched in around 2016, I believe it also was subject to the world's longest tease out. If you remember that, they were teasing out that
Mhm.
bike for 500 years, it felt like, a la Triumph dirt bike story. They were teasing that out for a long time. When it landed, people weren't quite sure what to make of it. It definitely was a little bit of an odd duck, but it found its bearings out here. It's a great selling bike. I've ridden it. It's, I think, a load of fun. I think it is a very well-mannered dirt bike. It's just quirky enough to be Royal Enfield, to be something a little bit different, but it's kind of been the same guy since it was launched. Well, people have been clamoring for the next bump up version of this motorcycle ever since because it is a very small displacement single around 400 cc's. Well, the wait is over, gang, because they have indeed launched ahead of the EICMA actual launch. These photos and specs have been released out here on the internet, so let's go ahead and jump on in and talk about it. The Himalayan is finally the 2.0. So the new Royal Enfield Himalayan finally got a bump up. It is a new 452cc motor that is a brand new engine for the folks over at Royal Enfield. It has taken a hot minute for them to get there. The new displacement of 452 puts out 40 horsepower and 29.5 foot-pound torque. It is a liquid-cooled double overhead cam layout, and again, it is another single. They did stick with that big thumper vibe. They did a bit of a redesign on it, however, and as you can see by the bike on your screen, this, surprisingly to my eyeballs, looks a little bit more traditional enduro dual sport type motorcycle. I kind of like the funkier first edition of this machine, but I do love this new power. It's rolling on a 21-inch front with a 17-inch rear. It has 200 millimeters of travel at both ends, and the seat height is 230 millimeters. So it still is a relatively low seat height for that bike. I think that this is going to have also some amenities, including LED lighting and a USB-C socket. I mean, why not? It has some new controlled switchgear. It also has some ride modes, and you can also toggle the bike's ABS that this new bike is going to be coming with. It is coming in a handful of beautiful colors. I think this bike is really sharp. They have not been releasing any numbers as far as pricing goes, which is a little bit of a surprise to me. So this, however, It comes from a long pedigree of dirt bikes over at Royal Enfield land. Bikes like the Bullet that they have been making for forever and ever are literally been going around the globe. So it's really exciting to see the 2.0 of this bike. I am very excited to see the sell through of this. Just in case you were not aware, this bike will get you up to 75 miles per hour, but at that point you're absolutely wringing this bike's neck. You have to keep in mind this still is a small displacement single, but I think that really nice bump of juice is going to be really substantial and really important for this machine. I did have the chance to talk to the folks at Royal Enfield during the Super Meteor 650 launch, and I did ask them why they chose to not put in that 650 twin, and the response was that the folks at Royal Enfield have always considered the Himalayan. They want to stay in that big-ish single space. They want to be in this category. That keeps the bike nice and light. It makes it really accessible for buyers. And this is the space that they want to be in. They do not have any plans, as of right now anyway, that they are willing to talk about, of putting that 650 twin platform into a Himalayan. But would it perhaps be seen in future machines like a Scrambler? They were not willing to let that cat out of the bag for me. I would not be terribly shocked to see that going forward. But for right now, the Himalayan is going to be staying in this single, and it is in this new 450 version. Josh, what do you think about the 2.0 of the Royal Enfield Himalayan?
I'm torn on it, to be honest with you, and there's a couple of reasons. A, I think this is a great step forward for Royal Enfield. There's some cool tech on this bike. This fills a hole that people have asked for quite some time. I think, honestly, it's 40 horsepower. It's a 6-speed transmission. It's going to do better than 75 miles an hour. That being said, there's a few things that I think are a step weird. First off, it's 11.5 to 1 compression, whereas the other one was about 9.5 to 1 compression. That means it may not be as garbage gas friendly, which is part of the reason why people take the old Himalayan out to the middle of nowhere into third world countries, because you never know if you're going to get 82 octane or whatever. And you don't want something to turn into a grenade underneath you. So not being bad gas friendly, that's a point for me. The other thing I saw with it too, this is a shim and bucket valve adjustment, whereas the other one was a screw and lock nut type. Once again, the old Himalayan, you could do a valve adjustment on the side of a Himalayan mountain. This one, you can't. So there's a couple of things like that where I see them as great steps forward for performance, but does that get them out of the audience that they've been with because they just had these rock solid bikes that you needed 3 tools in your toolkit and that was all for? So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. I'm excited.
Yeah, I totally agree with every point you're making out here, because that's why the Bullet existed for so long, is because you literally could repair it and take it apart by the side of the road with a handful of tools. And the simplicity of that was really brilliant about the first generation of the Himalayan. However, is that the market audience for that bike? Is that who's buying that bike, particularly in, overseas markets where they're trying to appeal to a younger audience who wants a little bit more horsepower, who wants a little bit more oomph, and it has this new liquid-cooled fancy engine in it? So it's a trade-off. I hear exactly what you're saying, though. It's a tough call. I think it is really interesting. I do like that little bit of bump of power, and I think it might open a couple people's eyeballs. Just saying. What do you got for
I
your
totally
first story,
agree with
Josh?
you. It's
Yep.
going to be interesting to see. So
Yep.
if I said an Italian duck, which of course means that I was talking about none other than Ducati. So last week we talked about this cool single cylinder, and I showed the picture of the Ducati engine strangling the KTM. And this week, even before EICMA, this past week, they released the Hypermotard 698 Mono using that engine that they released last week. No big surprise that they released this, but any bike that's on street tires that you can get your elbow down on is going to interest quite a few people. So this thing, it is powered by that 698, which, like I said, we mentioned last week. It's 77 horsepower, 46 foot-pounds of torque. It makes 85 horsepower if you get the Termi race system on it, and you can buzz it to 10,250 RPM is the red line. Some of the interesting specs of the bike as a whole. 351 pounds, wet weight with 3 gallons of gas on board, a seat height of 32.7 inches. So it is a low seat height for what it is. It's high end components through and through. It's got the Marzocchi forks up front with 8.5 inches of travel, a Sachs shock with 9.4 inches of travel out back, and Brembo high end top of the line brakes, 330 millimeter up front, 245 out rear. You need that big brake out the back because you know
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be hucking this thing into corners sideways. That
Yep.
being said, it is also will have a number of electronic riding aids, including traction control, wheelie control, if you have the Termi system on and a tune, and then Bosch lean angle controlled ABS. This will come with 17-inch cast wheels on it and sticky, sticky, sticky tires, according to the photo that you see here. Now, one of the cool things about sticky 17 inches is with this, if you want to put something that is a bit blockier or a bit knobbier, in 17s, there are plenty of options for you out there. So if you want to take this and somewhat kind of dual-ish sport it, you can.
Yeah.
With this, it is a supermoto, and it's going to have a TFT screen, LED lights, lithium-ion battery, all the premium stuff that you would expect from Ducati. Now, here's where this gets interesting. The starting price is expected to be around $12,995. There's going to be an
What?
RVE variant coming with a quick shifter enabled and some other perks. I don't know what those are. Neither does anyone else. Ducati hasn't announced them yet. That will go for $14,495. The thing that I find interesting about this is Ducati listed the maintenance on this engine. We covered that last week. It's about every 7,000 miles you need to do an oil change. Every 14,000 miles it needs a valve adjustment. So you don't need to set aside much money for that. I would, however, suggest taking out a loan for a few extra thousand for the lawyer fees that you are going to need for shenanigans like this. So a few added side notes in this. If you watch the video that Ducati uses to promote this, this harkens back to the Honda Hornet video from about 2 years ago that
Ooh.
confused the hell out of both Jacqui and I when you realize they're going for a lifestyle and not a bike. And I frankly watched that video. I was
No.
confused, a little bit anxious, and not the good kind of anxious. This is a direct competitor to KTM's SMCR, the 690 SMCR, and the
Yes.
Husqvarna 701 Supermoto. So
Yes.
I put some numbers together here. Horsepower, Ducati 77, KTM and Husqvarna 74. So give that win to Ducati. Torque, Ducati 46. KTM Husqvarna 48. So they
Wow.
get the win in that department. Now, when I said the price, you were shocked, Jacqui, but let me tell you something here. This is where it's interesting. Ducati 12,995. KTM and Husqvarna 12,999. So if you want to save $4, get the Ducati. But to me, with all of this, this is obviously a shot across the bow at KTM. And I
Man.
wonder if it's because Brad Binder was harassing Pecco Bagnaia towards the end of the MotoGP season in points and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
This, to me, is a very cool bike. I would stick one in my garage in a heartbeat if I had an extra 13 grand laying around. I do not, but what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? Do you think Ducati got a winner here?
This is for yes, this is such a slam dunk. I love the Hypermotard anyway. I'm a huge Hypermotard fan. I love it with this big nasty single. I do think that this is just a bare knuckle brawl, Ducati versus KTM. I think this is a real nasty scratch fight, is what they're trying to get into. But this, I
Yep.
mean, this is stunning. This is amazing. I love everything about what's happening here. It's just absolutely a yes, a slam dunk. Sign me up and take my money, please, from me for sure. And I love that it's particularly, it seems like it's a lot of Italian bikes where all these bikes are coming out ahead of EICMA. Like,
Yeah, notice
yeah,
that.
why wait? Yeah, why wait till the big show when you can just go ahead and talk about it on the internet in advance and drum up a little bit of like,
Grab the
pre
headlines.
anticipation. Exactly,
Grab the
because that's
headlines when it's dead.
That's what I'm saying, is because everyone's going to be talking about the same handful of bikes for the next 4 days. So get ahead of it, or wait till the back end of it, which is what you and I are going
Yep.
to do. I'm just saying out here. So anywho, slam dunk for the folks at Ducati. I love it. I love seeing it. I love a good scratch fight with KTM. So let's go ahead and talk about my second story for today, which is at the very beginning of the show, I mentioned it's not very sunny for the folks over at Sondors, or also known as Flight of the Sondors. But before we jump into that story, we've got some words from our mid-show partners.
What's up, Power Sports and Harley Davidson dealerships? How's your lead response time? Are you quick on the draw or slow as molasses? I'm Joe with another pit stop pointer that'll make you sell more fun. Here's the deal. Reply to leads within 60 seconds and your chances of closing grow to 391%. So either lead the pack or eat some dust. So rev up your response time. Quick replies mean more sales. Go to pitstoppointers.com for more insights and stay tuned for the next pit stop pointer.
At XOTO, we set out to build the world's most stable, easy to ride, and fun electric scooter ever created. With XOTO, you get up to a 90-mile range on a charge and up to 45 miles per hour. It's the world's first front-wheel drive scooter and has self-stabilizing technology, even when you're stopped. There's no motorcycle license required, and you can purchase an XOTO electric scooter today at XOTOinc.com. If you ride, you've probably encountered long wait times at stoplights and have even considered running red lights. Modern traffic light sensors are triggered by the conductive mass of metal materials on each vehicle, making it hard for motorcycles to activate them due to their metal mass. Signalmatic VS2 attaches to your motorcycle and produces a signal that trips traffic light sensors quicker and more effectively. Stop waiting and start riding with Signalmatic today. Proudly made in the USA. Visit www.signal-matic.com.
Well, all right, as promised, I've got a really interesting story that I caught wind of just this past week, floating around a little bit. And I thought this was really a very interesting story, because this motorcycle appeared out here on the internet last year. And I think I know Josh and I talked about it, because it's just so cool looking and was totally different, grabbed the headlines. Everybody was shook, because this bike, and this is going to be a motorcycle from the folks over at Sondors. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say motorcycle. It's an e-bike, an e-moto type bike from the folks over at Sondors. And the reason why this grabbed and snatched headlines is because look at this bad dog. Super killer, very cool design, battery down nice and low, very nimble, very agile looking. I love how they did like the cutaway of the gas tank, even though obviously this is not a gas tank, this is an e-bike. But the reason why this snatched the headlines is because they were talking about the top speed for this bike was around 60 miles per hour. They were talking about the range for this was supposed to be like in the 60-mile range. And the price tag for this is what got people totally shook and up in arms, because I think that they were talking about this bike being in like the $6,000 category. So this really turned a lot of heads. And then I've seen relentless email blasts since and relentless news about it since. But I hadn't heard a lot about any of the bikes actually landing, and it seems like it's been an awful long time. So I wasn't reporting or following up on it because I was waiting for these bikes to actually be in somebody's hot little hands. Well, that did not happen. And here is the reason why. The folks at Sondors are in a bit of trouble because they took a bunch of deposits for these machines, and the bikes are not making their way to customers. Let's go ahead and dive on into this very spicy story for the folks over at Sondors. At the beginning of 2023, Sondors was a hotly anticipated e-bike maker. The MetaCycle, which is the one that's on your screen, had decent reviews. Deliveries were supposedly in process, and the company even announced an electric Enduro was on the way, in addition to their lineup of e-bikes, like more bicycle-style e-bikes. Fast forward today, it seems the story of Sondors is going from bad to worse with each passing day. There's already been rumors about the company possibly going bankrupt, and now more information has come to light. In the latest report, thousands of Sondor motorcycles are lying stale, sitting in China as we speak, confirmed by the EV company's Chinese partner, who was hired to produce this motorcycle. According to the factory officials, there are over 500 completed metacycles ready to go, sitting there for nearly a year. Some of these even have crates around them, while others lie stranded under covers. Also, there are umpteenth manufacturing components, frames, electricals, wheels, said to be enough for another 1,500 motorcycles simply laying around. Why on earth is this happening? Because of payment issues. The factory reports that the EV company hasn't paid its bills for well over a year. Only a prepayment for the initial 2,000 unit order was made in June of 2022, following which their amount remains unpaid up to date. Here's the timeline. June of 2022, 2,000 unit pay order landed. September of 22, the factory sent 360 MetaCycles to the US, but still no payment. October of 22, production stops because of no payment. March of 23, the company the owner, Storm Sondors, visits China to ask for a reduction in price and to alter the existing contract. In June of 23, Storm Sondors claims no relationship is no longer with that factory. So now, besides the above woes, loads of customers have launched complaints against the e-bike company to the Better Business Bureau. A look at the website suggests over 200 customer complaints, ranging from no refunds on pre-bookings to no communications to no delivering. Owing to this, BBB has now launched an official investigation on Sondors premium electric bikes. The other thing that has also happened that I thought was really interesting is somebody went to the trouble of tracking down the e-bikes headquarters that were in the United States. I believe they were in California, and the building now appears to be empty and is no longer listed as the Sondors headquarters. Ruh-roh, Josh, what's going on with the folks over at Sondors?
It's tough because when you get a company that's not established, that's trying to make a mark, they're going to make these big promises on stuff, and sometimes there's just not something there to back it up. Now, what's difficult about this too is Sondors actually has a really good e-bike business that sold fat-tired e-bikes for a very long time and has been very successful with that. Them moving into this has been something that, boy, that's kind of just scary, and it's why I'm riding a 24-year-old Suzuki DRZ.
Well, there's many reasons why you're still riding that DRZ, but
Yeah,
which I don't fault you for. I love that you went on a ride this past weekend. I love that for you. But the real bummer about this is, all jokes aside, is I hate seeing any business struggle or fail.
Correct.
We always want to see winners out here, and I thought this bike was a winner. I love the design of it. I love the look of this bike. I was totally waiting to get one of those in my hot little hands and ride that bike because I thought this was just a little bit too good to be true. And it appears that it might be. So we're all going to have to wait and see. If we hear any more about this story, I'll be bringing it to you here on the program. And with that is another great episode from us out here. Josh, what do you got going on in your neck of the woods? For me, I'm going to wrap up my stories, but I know you've got one more to go.
I do. So there's not going to be any Priest part of this, but there is going to be an English Triumph part of this. So Triumph did release an updated Tiger 900 range. They have done some changes with this bike, and I think they're all going to be very welcome. So first off, they went from 5 bikes. They are now down to 3 Tiger 900s. There's the GT, the GT Pro, and the Rally Pro. The trademark 3-cylinder engine is still there. It is 13% more powerful. Yes, definitely a good one for that. 106.5 horsepower, which, when you realize this is an 900cc triple, that is plenty. There's also 66 foot-pounds of torque, and this somehow gets up to 9% better fuel economy. So you can go a little bit further before having to push. We all like that. I almost ended up having to do that yesterday also. So on your screen now, we have obviously the Rally Pro, because yes, that is what we do with these types of things. All 3 models will come standard with ABS and traction control on them. There is also something interesting as a safety feature Triumph put in called their rapid deceleration system. It activates the hazard lights whenever it feels you toss the anchor out the back, meaning grabbing a handful of brake or a footful of brake. It turns the hazard lights on to grab extra attention. I think that's awesome.
Wow.
And it shuts them off as soon as you apply the gas again. So in this, the one on the screen here is the Rally Pro, as I mentioned. This comes with longer travel suspension, 21-inch front, 19-inch rear, and, as you can see, spoked wheels. When you go to the other two, such as the GT or the GT Pro, those have 19 front, 17 rear, and those are in cast options. We talked kind of over the past couple of weeks about some of these kind of more touring-ish oriented bikes, and this fits into, there's so many more using that 19-inch front and 17-inch rear. There are a ton of rubber combinations out there, especially if you compare it now to what there was even 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. All three Tiger 900 models come with a ride-by-wire, which gives you 4 different riding modes: road, rain, sport, and off-road, of course. It's also going to come with a full-color TFT instrument display, cruise control, and hill hold for all those people that don't want to burn their clutch on the uphill. It is expected to arrive in your dealership in early 2024. Triumph already has over 50 accessories laid out for this bad boy, and 4 accessory kits. Some of those range in terms of crash protection, skid protection, luggage protection, things of that nature. So they've got a full range of accessories, and I am sure that you can finance that all. When you look at this is interesting, especially when you compare this with what we talked about earlier on pricing. It is only 200 cc's more, but there's obviously a lot more motorcycle here. This is basically, do the math, it's about $3,000 more. It is $14,995 for the GT. The GT Pro is $16,895, and the Rally Pro starts at $17,395. To me, this is a pretty good bang for your buck in terms of this. Triumph just did, like I said, some updates with this. For the most part, it's similar to what they had before. There's a lot of tweaks and there's some changes in the way it looks. I like it. This is that heavy middleweight range. I think that's what we're going to call it now, Jacqui. That, once again, it's not a 600 or 700, but it's playing with the KTM 890 and stuff like that. It fits a different demographic. It's got its niche. I think Triumph's onto it here. The Tiger's got a great history too.
Oh. I mean, Triumph Tiger has been a cult bike for years.
Decades.
This is a beloved bike. Folks love this bike. Folks get on this bike and do not leave it behind. Nope. I totally get it. I think it's a really fun machine. There is a lot to be said for that triple engine. I do love a triple. They make power in such a nice way, and they have a great sound to them, very unique characteristics. I'm just a huge fan of this bike. I do like that as far as these chonky middleweight category is how I'm going to refer to them. As far as these chonky middleweights, I do like that the seat height, there is a low version available for this, or a low seat that is much more approachable for this bike. At 5'2", I am always going to be on the side of the little guys, literally out here. It's a slam dunk for me. I actually really like that they have slowly started weeding out some of the redundancies in their lineup. Yes. I've seen it with some of the speed twin bikes versus street twin bikes versus, like, it just gets too confusing. I like that, especially for 23 and 24, they're starting to really thin the herd and stay a little bit leaner and a little bit meaner. I think they got a little carried away. I think the way that they still can snatch up those customers, though, is by having these awesome accessory packages, which the Tiger is totally known for. And as you mentioned, they've got a bazillion accessories for this bike. They're ready to have you just load it to the hilt and, conquer the world, really.
Yeah. It's a premium bike without necessarily a doctor or a lawyer cost to it. And that's one of the other things that I like about the Triumph too. So they fit in this niche of it's not entry level. It is a premium bike, but you're not putting your kid's college fund at risk for this.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is a little bit more approachable than some of the other big guys out there. And like I said, I'm going to call this a chonky middleweight, but I mean, is it? It's almost in the heavyweight power numbers. I mean, it's not too far off. It's right up there with the 1250s that are floating around.
It's the thing is with me for that at 100 horsepower, that's plenty. I mean, I'm happy on basically, just under half of that. So 100 horsepower is plenty on this. And in the same sense, you get a better price with it, less weight. And yeah, there's all sorts of benefits to it. I get it.
Yeah.
And like I said, not everyone needs 160 horsepower. Some of us are happy with less.
Some of us are happy with less, Josh. And with that, we're going to close up today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Another awesome episode out here. As you can see, I am on the road getting ready to go ride some motorcycles and go have some adventure. We're just doing a little sightseeing in my home city before we hit the road. I will be bringing next week's show to you also from the road. I should be out in Las Vegas again. So I will see you next week out here while I'm traveling out around. Have a great week, everybody, and we will see you next week. Ride safe.